Hello again and welcome to my channel. This tutorial is for another crochet along for a throw or blanket. It's called Eanair and I've worked this in a double knit yarn with a 5mm hook. If you want a larger blanket you could work in an Aran yarn with a 6 or a 6.5mm hook. The finished size will be around about 52 inches, worked with double knit yarn with a 5mm hook. Excuse me. You can use any colour way that you want to, and there will be a written pattern available shortly. I worked the original blanket in what I would term as autumn shades, but for this one on the tutorials I'm going to use quite a bright selection of colours. Going to start as always with a slip knot onto the hook. We're going to work 4 chain and we'll join into that first chain, into that first chain there with a slip stitch to form the circle that's going to be the centre of our blanket. Into this ring we're going to work 12 doubles. Excuse me. The first one as always will be the 3 chain. That counts as the first stitch. So we'll do another 11 double crochets into this circle. I'll just mention as well that the terms that I use are US terms. I do get quite a few comments saying that the terms don't correspond with my accent, but I do prefer US terms to the UK terms. They always seem to make that little bit more sense. So just working the doubles into this centre ring. We start with a circular blanket that will turn square as we progress through the rows. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the final stitch is 12, and we're going to join onto that first stitch with a slip stitch, and there we've got our centre formed. I'm going to snip off the yarn and pull the end through, so that's what we'll have to start with. So now on to row 2. If you want to start with a 3 chain as a starting stitch, feel free to do so on each of these rows, but I tend to do a standing stitch to start with, just so that it looks a little bit neater. So I'm going to join with a slip knot onto the hook. We can start in any stitch. We're going to work 3 doubles. So if you've joined your yarn to the stitch, you'll work the 3 chain, but I'm going to do a standing double as the starting stitch. So into that stitch we work a starting double plus another 2 doubles into that same stitch. So we've got 3 stitches in that first stitch there. I'm going to do a single into the next stitch, and then we work 3 doubles into the next one, and that's the pattern repeat. We're going to do that all the way around. So a single into the next one and then work 3 doubles into the following stitch. And you can pause the video at any point to catch up on each row. For these faster rows, I'll just work the whole row along with you. I'm going to catch the tails of yarn as well as I'm going along. So we've done the single, we're now going to do 3 doubles. And a single into the next. And then the last stitch will be the final single. We're going to join into the top of the first stitch there with a slip stitch. And again, I'm going to snip off the yarn, pull that end through and fasten off. So we're ready for row 3. For row 3, again I'm going to join the yarn to the hook, and we're going to work in any of the single crochets. So we've got the 3 doubles and the singles in between. We're going to start with one of the singles. I'm going to back post single around that single, like so. I'm now going to work 2 chains. We're going to skip the 3 doubles and we're going to back post the next single. Chain 2, skip the 3 doubles there, and we're going to back post single the next single. So we're actually working behind the previous rows. We're going to do that all the way around. Chain 2, back post single around the single, and we're just skipping all of the doubles in this row. And just carry on all the way around. When we get to the final stitch, which is the stitch that we started with, we do the 2 chain, skip those doubles, and we're going to join into that first single with a slip stitch. So we've got 6 chain 2 spaces that are sitting behind our work. Again, we're going to just snip off the yarn and fasten off, pull that yarn through, and we're ready then to start the next row. If you're working your blanket in just the one colour, at this point you would be able to slip stitch into the chain space, because we're going to work the next row into these chain spaces here that are behind the work. So each 2 chain space will have 3 doubles. So I'm doing a standing starting stitch there. That's 1, 2 and 3. So we've got 3 doubles behind these 3 doubles here, worked into the 2 chain space. Sorry, we do 5 doubles here. We've done 3, there's 4, and the next one is 5. So we've got 5 doubles that are sitting behind the 3 doubles that we did on this row here. We're going to skip the singles, the back post singles that we did to form these 2 chain spaces, and we're going to work 5 doubles into each of those 2 chain spaces. So we skip the single, we're working behind the 3 doubles, we're going to do 5 doubles into that next 2 chain space. And then the same again into the next 2 chain space. We're just going to do the same all the way around. So each of the 2 chain spaces that are sitting behind our work will have the 5 doubles. So I'll meet you when we get to the end of this row. When you've finished the last 5 stitches into that final 2 chain space, we're just going to join into the first double with a slip stitch. Pull the yarn through and fasten off. So the front will look like this, the back is going to look like this. So we're ready to start our next row. This next row is row 5, and we're going to work into the space between the 5 double crochet sets. So it's this space here that sits between the 2 sets of 5, and we're going to work popcorns into this space. So we're going to start with a standing double, and we work another 3 doubles into that same space. We take the hook from the loop into that first stitch, pick up the loop and pull it through. We're going to chain 1 to finish off the popcorn, and we're going to then work another 2 popcorns into that same space. So we'll have 3 popcorns in each of the spaces between the 5 doubles. So we've got 4 doubles, pull the loop through and chain 1 to fasten off that popcorn, and then we do a 3rd popcorn into the same space. So you can see there that we've got the 3 popcorns. I'll just slightly enlarge so that you can see the 3 popcorns there in that space. We're going to chain 1, just reduce that back down again, and then we're going to back post single each of the doubles in this 5 double set. So from the back to the front, pick up the loop, yarn over and pull through. We're going to do that on each of these doubles. So each double will have a back post single worked around. Just realised I've skipped one there. I'll start that bit again. It's a little bit tricky to find that first stem of the double. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we've got 3 popcorns and 5 back post singles around these 5 doubles here. We're going to chain 1 and then we're going to repeat this pattern. Repeat now. We're going to do 3 popcorns into this next space, followed by 5 back post singles. So we start by working the 4 doubles that will form the first popcorn. Chain 1 to fasten off the popcorn, but we're not doing another chain in between the popcorns. We go straight into that next popcorn. Pull the loop through, chain 1 to fasten off, and then we go straight into the 3rd popcorn. I'm going to chain 1 to finish off the 3rd popcorn. We're going to chain 1 and then start with the back post singles, and just make sure that you've got 5 back post singles around these 5 doubles. So we've got 3, 4 and 5, and then chain 1. So we've got a chain 1 after the 3 popcorns, we've got a chain 1 after we've done the 5 singles, and then we've got the 3 popcorns in these spaces. So if you want to pause the video and carry on around until we get to this last 5 back post singles, we'll do a chain 1 to end the row, and we just join into this first popcorn here with a slip stitch and then fasten off. So I'll meet you when we get to the end of this round. On to round 6. Again, I'm going to join the yarn to the hook with a slip stitch, and we're going to start in the first of any of these 5 back post singles. We're going to work a double into each of those stitches. So I'll start with a standing double into that first one, and then 1 in each of the next 4. And there's the 5th one. So we've got 1 double in each of those 5 back post singles. We're now going to do a front post single around the top of the middle popcorn. So if you can see there, just put the hook between the top of the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over and pull through. So we've actually caught the middle popcorn there. we're going to repeat that pattern now all the way around. So we're going to skip the popcorn at either side of that middle one. We only do the single into the top of the middle one. So we go straight over to the next 5 back post singles, and we're going to do a double into each one of those stitches. So we've got 5 doubles, and then we're going to again go into the top of the popcorn there, yarn over and pick up a loop, pull through, and then we go straight onto the next 5 doubles. So that forms the pattern repeat for this row. 5 doubles, 1 in each of the back post singles, and then we just catch the centre popcorn there with a front post single into the top of the stitch, and then back to the 5 doubles, 1 in each of the back post singles from the last row. So if you want to carry on working that same pattern repeat, 5 doubles, 1 front post single into the middle popcorn, and then 5 doubles, and so on. We're just going to go all the way around working the same way, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of this row. When we've worked all the way around, the last stitch will be the front post single into the popcorn, and then we just go straight across to that first stitch that we worked and join with a slip stitch, and then we can fasten off the yarn and pull through. There we go. So at this point you might want to work in the ends of yarn so that we've not got a lot of tails to work in afterwards, but I'll carry on with the next row for now. So we're going to start in any stitch anywhere on the round, and we're going to work a back post double in each stitch. So again I'm going to join with a slip knot onto the hook. I'm going to start with a standing back post double around any of the stitches, so we'll just do it around this one, and we're going to do the same around every stitch. When we come to the front post single that we did here, again we just work a back post double around that stitch, and then a back post double around the 5 doubles that we worked on the last row. So again, you might want to just pause the video at this point and work your stitches all the way around. Just a little bit of information. To make the blanket you'll need around about 800 grams of double knit yarn, and you can use any double knit at all. You can either use what you've got in a stash, or if you're purchasing yarn to do it, you will need around about 800 grams. That's to make a throw that's round about 52 inches square. So I'll leave you to carry on working the back post doubles all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of the row. Don't worry at this point if your work seems to be frilling or cupping slightly. It will all flatten off as we go further into the blanket. So we're going to join with a slip stitch into that first stitch, and at this point we're not going to fasten off the yarn. If you would prefer to do it in another colour, that's perfectly fine, but for this row I'm going to carry on with the same colour. So we're going to chain 3, and that's going to count as the first stitch. If you're working with a new colour, you can start this with a standing double here at this point, and then I'm going to double into the same stitch. So we've got 2 stitches in 1 stitch there. We've got 2 doubles, one is the chain 3 and one is the double into that same stitch. We're going to do the same all the way around. We're going to work 2 doubles into every stitch. So we had 36 stitches on the last round. At the end of this round we will have 72 stitches. So it's just a straightforward round of 2 doubles in each stitch all the way around. So again, if you want to pause the video and work your 2 stitches in each stitch all the way around, and I'll see you when we get to the end of this round. So when you reach the last stitch, again we're going to just join with a slip stitch, pull the yarn through and fasten off. So that's completed row 8. So for row 9 we're going to do 3 loop puff stitches, and I'm going to start in with a new colour. Use a nice bright green on this one. So to start the 3 loop puff, we're going to just work in any stitch at all, and I'm going to do a standing puff stitch for this one. Just zoom in slightly. So yarn over into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over into the stitch and pick up a loop. So we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 loops on the hook. We yarn over and we're going to pull through all of those stitches. We do a chain 1 to fasten off the puff stitch, and we're going to skip the next stitch and work a 3 loop puff stitch into the next one. So into, yarn over into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over into the stitch and pick up a loop. So that's the 3 loop puff stitch that we're doing here, and then chain 1 to fasten off. Skip the next stitch, and again we're going to do exactly the same thing into the next one. We're just going to do that all the way around this row. Skip a stitch, work a 3 loop puff stitch, skip a stitch, puff stitch, skip a stitch, puff stitch, and so on all the way around. So again, if you want to pause the video at this point and work your puff stitch row, and I'll meet you when we get to the end. So I've worked the puff stitch into each alternate stitch. At the end of this round you will have 36 puff stitches. We're going to just join into the top of that first one with a slip stitch, snip off the yarn and fasten off. So for the next row we're going to work into the stitches here that we skipped from the last row, which in this case is the pink stitches here, and we're also going to work around the puff stitches. So we'll start with a standing stitch around the puff stitch. We're going to do a front post double, so we'll do the front post double around the puff stitch there, and then into this stitch that we skipped on the previous row. In this case it's the pink stitch. We're going to work a treble into that stitch, so yarn over twice into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over through two once, yarn over through two twice, and yarn over through two a third time, and then we go around the top of the puff stitch with a front post double, and then a treble into the skip stitch that sits between the two puff stitches. We're going to work all the way around exactly the same, a puff stitch, a front post double around the puff stitch, and then a treble into the skipped stitch, a front post double around the puff and a treble into that skipped stitch. So we're working into around the puff stitches that are from row 9, we're working into the skipped stitches from row 8, and it's just the same all the way around, a treble followed by a front post double. Again, you can pause the video at any point and work the rest of your row rather than just watching me working these two stitches. So carry on working the pattern, repeat all the way around until we get to this last stitch here. At the end of this row you will again have 72 stitches, and I'll meet you when we get to the end. As we've worked all the way around, the last stitch is going to be the treble into that skipped stitch there between those last two popcorns. We're going to just join into that first stitch with a slip stitch, pull the yarn through and fasten off. So that's completed row 9. For row 10, we've got 72 stitches altogether if you want to just do a quick count up of your stitches to make sure that you're still on track. So the next row we're working popcorns again as we did on this row here. So I'm going to use the same colour for my popcorns on this row, but feel free to use whichever colour you want to use. So we're going to start in any stitch above a popcorn. So it's the front post double that's around a popcorn that we're going to start in, not the trebles. So again, start with a slip knot onto the hook and into this stitch, this front post double here, we're going to work 2 popcorns. So it's the 4 doubles, there's the 4th one, and then pull the loop through and a chain 1 to fasten off the popcorn. I'm now going to do a 2nd popcorn into that same stitch. And again pull the loop through and a chain 1 to fasten off. We now skip the next stitch, which is the treble from the previous row. We're going to skip that one. We're going to go over into the next front post double. We're going to work 2 popcorns again into that same stitch. And there's the 2nd one. I'm going to skip the treble and go straight over into the next front post double and work the 2 popcorns into that stitch. So this is the pattern repeat for this row. We're working 2 popcorns into each of the front post doubles and we're skipping each of the trebles. We're just going to work that same pattern repeat all the way around the row. So I've gotten 3 sets of 2 popcorns there. I'll let you pause the video again at this point and work all the way around, working alternate stitches, and we've got 2 popcorns in each stitch. So there will be 72 popcorns altogether, and I'll see you when we get to the end of this round. We'll just point out that the work will seem to frill a little bit at this point. Don't worry, because it will flatten out as we go further into the rows. I just don't want you to worry and think that you've got too many popcorns for the size of the row. It does tend to frill up a little bit, as you can see there, but it will flatten out once we get a few more rows worked. So I'll let you pause the video, carry on, and I'll meet you when I get to the end. I just wanted to point out that there's not too many popcorns if your work is starting to frill a little bit. So we've completed row 11. I'm now going to join a new colour to the hook, and for this row we're going to work a front post double around each popcorn all the way around, so it's a nice easy row. We'll start with a standing front post double, and we'll just work a front post around each of the popcorns. All the way around, and as we had 72 popcorns, we'll have 72 front post doubles at the end of this row. So it's a nice easy round that we don't have to think about too much. So again, if you want to pause the video at this point and work your front post doubles, and I'll meet you when we get to the end. So I've worked all the way around the popcorns with a front post double. We're going to join into that first stitch with a slip stitch, snip off the yarn and pull through to fasten off. So the circles flattened out quite a bit from the way it was frilling. For this next row, you may find that that your work will cup slightly, but again, don't worry, because it will flatten once we get a little bit further in. So again, we're going to start in any stitch, and I'm going to start away from where I fastened off so that we've not got all the ends in the same place. And for this row, we're going to work a back post half double. We're just going to work one back post half double around every stitch. So a half double, yarn over, in front of the stitch, pick up the loop, yarn over and pull through all three. We're just going to do this all the way around, and it will form a ridge from the previous row. So just another nice and easy row to finish off this first part of the blanket. So one half double around the stem of every stitch, all the way around. And don't worry if your work starts to cup slightly. When we do our next row, we're going to increase, so it will definitely flatten out again. So that's the effect that we get from this stitch. Just work the same all the way around, and then when you get to the last stitch, again we're just going to slip stitch into the starting stitch and then fasten off the yarn. It is a good idea to work in the ends as you're going along so that you've not got lots of ends to work in when you've finished the whole blanket. So that will conclude this first part of the blanket once you've got all the way around, and we'll start on part 2 in the next video. I hope you've enjoyed working along with me for this first part, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.